Hello and welcome to Wake Up Our Faith, the show where passion, purpose, and dreaming big challenge common sense. We like to think of it as a conversation to shed light on the upside of upside down living. Matt Ham, Kevin Adams in the Big Talker studio today. Our brother Joe Catanacci producing. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening, whether you're catching us on a recording day, which is Wednesdays, on our social platforms of Facebook, Rumble, BitChute, Telegram, YouTube, all the above. The podcast, of course, on Spotify, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. And then we are streaming every Saturday and Sunday on Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM. So, Kevo.
Hello.
Happy day.
Yeah, happy day.
We got a lot of good stuff to get into today. We're going to be having a call in here from your wonderful wife, Holly, to start off the second segment. But today's title is, Does It Honor God to Lower Your Expectations of Him? So we'll go ahead and dive in.
Yeah. Well, think about that question. It's I like having titles that are questions, so they provoke thought, and that's kind of the point of why we're here.
It's kind of interesting. There's a lot of folks who do not like to be provoked to thought.
Yeah. Well, they need to go somewhere else and not listen, because that's what we're about.
Amen.
But I will say, last week, just to say it, I'm half the time driving when I have a title. And I work on this usually all morning on Wednesday mornings, and it comes from the week, or it comes from things that I feel very moved about, or things that people deal with in my day-to-day conversations in the kind of mentoring format. But last week, I had written it down one way, and then in my car, I spoke it in there a different way, and so you had it one way and I had it another, and so you were right, and so I just want to say that publicly as my friend and brother. You had the title right as far as you knew, and and really it didn't matter. But the bottom line to last week is, you don't have anything if you don't have faith, and your wealth is your faith.
Amen.
And so just to say that, and then come back and have a good show today. And my wife will be on at some point, and kind of a Here's Why segment. We haven't done it in a while, but she's been in school and doing different things, but she feels pretty convicted to come on, and she's much better at that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like I needed to get that out there last week. But anyway, here we go. So, does it honor God to lower your expectations of Him? So, that's a great question. I don't think, I think one of the things that maybe people either love or hate about me is that I have plenty of those kinds of questions. And it's because I've had to answer them myself. And, what's the point if you don't grow and aren't challenged? So, think about that question. In your day-to-day, when you feel down, or when you feel a loss of hope, or when you feel, some behavior pattern knocking on your brain negatively, remember, ask that question. Does it honor God to lower your expectations of Him? So the show is about a deeper idea, but that is a lead-in it's just meant to help people understand. Start there. And I don't think anyone can say yes to that.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things, and of course, you texted me the title again ahead of time, and it gives me a chance to start to formulate my own questions and thoughts as we begin to step in here today. It's interesting because there's a lot of people who poo-poo Christianity, or they want to throw shade at Christianity because Christian people have let them down, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that the answer to that is, that's because your expectations were in the wrong place.
Right.
They're of people and not of God. So people get that concept. But on the counter to that, I don't think people actually understand what it means to have expectations of God. And I wanted to jump into this and help maybe formulate the answer to this question is, how would you define the difference between expectations of God versus demands of God, or the way you would do it if you were God? You know what I mean? Like, if I had an expectation that He would eradicate COVID right now, right, from the earth, or remove mask mandates, or whatever nonsense. yet he doesn't do that. There's a tension there between I had an expectation that didn't come about, and ultimately that expectation I feel like is rooted in my own limited understanding instead of his understanding or his majesty. Am I making sense?
Well, I'm sure you are to our audience. To me, I don't quite understand what you're asking, but I'm listening, man. Maybe say it again.
Yeah. So I think the idea of having an expectation of God, I think there's a lot of people who have maybe come to God with an expectation to heal someone, to remove a burden, to show up in a certain way, and that did not happen. So therefore, they get disappointed. Yeah, right. They're disappointed. They're dejected. They're rejected. And so they go, well, next time I'm not going to put that expectation on God because it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, and now I'm hurt. So I think there's a line of clarity between placing an expectation on God and maybe what we would call a demand. And again, I'm just trying to define it, but that's the tension that immediately arises when I see this question.
Well, I think that it's very simple to me with respect to you and your question. You can't have a relationship without expectation. So whether you call it a demand or an expectation or hope or whatever you want to call it, I don't see how you can walk away. You can't have a relationship with God without having an expectation. You and I have expectations of one another as business partners and friends. So that's part of relationship, is it not?
Oh, yeah.
So, we can talk about that with people, but I just rather just go right there.
Yeah.
The question is, does it honor him to lower them or not? I'm assuming people already know they have an expectation of God. If they read his word, then he says this and that and the other thing. What do you believe?
I guess the question then would be, is it possible to have an unhealthy expectation?
Yeah, I mean, they're either low or high. There's some expectation there if you're a Christian. If you're not, then certainly you have no expectation of a fictitious being that you don't believe in.
Okay.
That's fine. It's not fine ultimately. We don't agree with that, but
yeah, that's not
you're
our audience
free
either.
To believe what you want. So, the real question is, once again, let's just circle back. Does it honor God to lower your expectations of him? And maybe I'm assuming too much, but I'm assuming people will go, no, it doesn't. So how would it? How would it? We can talk about that, but if God is God, then that means he is ultimately the best at everything. Would we lower our expectations of the very best? What did he pay for us? He paid everything. That makes us priceless. So right there, we're already, there's nothing he would withhold from us if he already paid everything for us. So this is just common sense to me as a Christian. I don't think it's deep PhD stuff. I think it's just basic. So anyway, I think the real question gets back to where do those expectations come from, and how do you grow them? Because to me, it dishonors God to lower your expectations of him. If God says he is love, if he says he is faithful, and he says, I'll give you the desires of your heart, and he says it more than once. I mean, you read Psalms and it's in there. So what does all that mean? It just means that you don't really believe it, or you do. And if you do, then you must follow that. So really, the reason people don't completely follow that, they'll quote it, is because it has to come from a deeper place. And that's where I want to get to. So, we want to, let's go back kind of to basics, go back several years ago in our shows, but we want to really break down the mechanics of how this works, his voice, how we follow it, how we hear it, and all that. And, I don't want to waste a lot of time dealing with the title because there's a lot more to it. But I think it's a good question for people to ask, to at least stop for a second. I ask these questions because I want people to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Stop. Be provoked. If you don't like it, don't listen. I really don't care. What I care about is your heart. If you want help, I'm here to help. I'm just a guy. But the deeper thing here is where can you go? How do you raise your expectations of God? Because in my view, that is the only way to honor him. You want your kids to have low expectations of you as a father? That's a question.
No, not at all. And again, I'm trying to tap into the tension of I'm expecting God to heal this man because he says he's faithful, because he says he will, whatever we ask
Did
for.
God tell you he was going to heal the man?
That's where I'm going to. And that's the tension that I wanted to navigate. And so maybe I jumped ahead, but that's ultimately where I think a potential listener who's navigating a past struggle where they expected God to heal by faith and that didn't happen. And so they're in this tension of wanting to raise their expectations, but dealing with past experience. And that's the person that I saw whenever you posed this question.
Well,
and it's a whole different angle. We don't have to go there. That's just what I saw.
We can talk about it. You saying you're jumping ahead, I don't really, I mean, it's simple. You know, Peter walked on water. He didn't do that on his own accord. He had to oblige it, but Jesus said, come. That's a call. That's not Peter doing it. That's Peter obliging it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think you're going to walk on water in your bathtub, which my kids tried when they were little, then it's probably not going to happen. If you think you're going to lay hands on somebody and heal them, if you don't have a word, if you don't have discernment or whatever Christianese thing you want to put on that, if you don't know, then, you know, that's not coming from God. Your expectation is on you.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, and that's exactly what I want to speak to, because I'm involved with a lot of relationships with people who we enter into prayer for healing, right,
mm-hmm.
for people,
mm-hmm.
and we minister to folks in our own community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's these moments where, you know, we feel like God died, Jesus died so that it was finished, and by his stripes we're healed, and so we want to stand in faith to pray. But yet, if there's not the revelation, like you said, or the clarity that God told you to pray for healing,
mm-hmm.
that tension that exists for some people, and that gets to throw folks off. And I mean, very candidly.
So what's your answer?
My answer, that's what I'm asking the question to you, someone who's walked through this, because we had someone at our Saturday home gathering whose father was ill in the hospital, and I felt a burden to minister to her in prayer. And it was prayed that her father would be healed. And her father passed away this past week. And so now we want to navigate that tension of potentially misrepresenting, right, what God was saying versus the faith to pray. And it's just a healthy conversation.
I think you should just answer the question. Does it honor God to lower your expectations? That's a yes or no question.
No.
Okay. So let's start there. As far as people dying and there's a good God, let bad things happen and all that stuff, that's a 20-hour conversation.
Sure.
I can answer every bit of it. Read the cleanse. It's all in there. All of that stuff we deal with. So this isn't this stuff takes so long to unpack. People have to grow. They have to listen. They have to step into this. It's not you know, milk. You have to get away from milk and get to meat. And that's just, you know, that's all I got. So the bottom line is, if God's not telling you to do something, you have to learn how to listen to God. You can't just read it in his word and apply your own willpower to that. And that's what most people do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people see some humanistic or twisted or slightly skewed view of what God is going to do. But that doesn't entitle you to lower your expectations of him. What it does is it allows you, it gives you the posture and the place as a paid-for, saved servant to grow into a sanctified son. You hear people talking about discipleship is this or that. Of course, it's following Jesus' commands, but ultimately, what it means, the journey is going from saved servant to sanctified son. You have to understand your relationship with God. When you do that, what happens? He passes down through you. He gives to you, and it works. And then you know what he's doing. Then you follow that. And so if God's calling you to go heal people, then go do it. But that's not for everybody. That doesn't mean the elders can't come together and lay hands on. They can. But be careful what you pray. This is a long subject, and I have all of this laid out. It'll take me hours to go through this.
Sure. And again, I'm not trying to steer this. I'm just, there's a real situation, right, within our community, and these are conversations that I've had, and so I wanted to bring it up. But I'm willing to yield to wherever you want to take the conversation. I saw that in relation to the expectation, and, just wanted to know how to navigate it from a place of wisdom.
Well, you have to understand what God is saying to you, and most people don't, and that's the problem. Most people do not understand what he's up to, what he's saying. We're not hijacking him and pulling him into something that makes us, in whatever layer or level or whatever, grand. We are humbled. We're listening. Yes, we love people. Yes, there's times we want to help them. We're not called to. Do you help every homeless person you see? Does it break your heart if there's a family man on the corner with kids out there and they just want some groceries? How many times do you see that? Never. What you see is something that looks like, not real sure about that. But when you see something, you have to be convicted or not, right? So that's where I want to go with this, because it answers all of these questions, but it gets to the deeper place, not the surfacey area of why does God allow bad things to happen to good people, which is really what that question is. We have to listen. We have to learn to listen. And that's the mechanical breakdown. If we can't do that, then we stay saved slaves, servants. And that's not the goal of discipleship. The goal of evangelism is that, to get you into heaven. But getting heaven into you, that takes time. So that's what this is about. And I just wanted to go back, if we have time, go back to a place where we talk about the basic idea of this and where that comes from. In other words, maybe the better way to say it is, how do I know what to do every day? How do I know where to go? All I can do is speak for myself. But I've seen it over and over and over again in helping people. I've seen it change lives. So it's a deep thing. But anyway, you have to lower your expectations of people and raise them of God. For me to say that to you is worthless. For you to be provoked and to dig into it yourself is like gold. Mm-hmm. Jesus himself said, basically, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. Mm-hmm. So me just telling you the answer is not what we're here to do. We're here to bring people the truth and show them so they can jump into it, because only that will help people grow. The rest of it they've heard before, mm-hmm. and they've heard it, look at all there's so much to say, but hardly any of it's honoring the Lord. It's just people talking, and I just don't want to get off on that. But so, look, here's the thing. How much time do we have, by the way?
We got 45 more minutes in the show for the segment we got about.
I'm talking about it.
Yeah, we've got probably 12, 13 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. That's what I was looking for. So, look, you've got to get to a place where you understand the difference. Let me read a verse here. This is Hebrews 4:12. And I pulled it up in a common English version. It's pretty simple. All right. It says, because God's word is living, active, and sharper than any two-edged sword, it penetrates to the point that it separates the soul from the spirit and the joints from the marrow. It's able to judge the heart's thoughts and intentions. So what's the most important part of that? Well, it's all important. Every letter is important. But most people don't go that deep into it. So let's just kind of start in the middle. What's truly important about that verse? Well, the soul and the spirit are two different things. How could you separate them? And why would he compare them to bone and marrow? Well, what is bone and marrow? Bone and marrow works beautifully together, but they're two different things. So now what you and I know is the soul and the spirit are not the same thing. Most people don't even realize that. You know, if you've been in it a while and maybe you sort of know that. But a lot of people don't. That's where this starts. So,
and again, what I'm pressing into, and I just don't want you to be frustrated with me, I'm asking questions to try to provoke our conversation. And if you are, I apologize. What I know and what you know is that there are soulish Christians who seek to lay hands and try to heal people, and it's their own willpower that's taking that over. When we're called to be the marrow, the spirit underneath, right, that follows the leading of the Father. And so differentiating those two things is very important, at least in my mind. That's what I'm trying to get to. And so I just don't want to cause frustration for you of trying to ask the question.
Well, it's fine. I don't need to be frustrated. I'm glad we got 43 minutes left, as you said, 45. I'm just trying to get something out here. You know, it doesn't, there's no combativeness to it. But there is a point that needs to be made. And bone and marrow are separate things. Spirit and soul are separate things. Most people don't know what those two things are. So we need to talk about that, because that's where ultimately God's voice is. If you don't know that, then you're going to go and try to heal people, and you won't understand what's going on. And so you, maybe to your point, you get mad at God and you stay a baby Christian for the rest of your life.
Yes.
But I'm not here to teach everybody that. I'm simply saying, stop. Ask that question. Does it honor God to lower your expectations of him? And if you can say yes, you're probably not going to listen. If you can say no, of course not, which is what I hope our listeners will say, no way, then let's start there. So the only question left isn't about everything else. It's about, well, where does my expectation grow? Where do I get that? How do I do that? And most people don't understand that because they think, I just need to read God's word because some pastor said that, and they don't even know why. So we've got to dig way up under this, and most people don't want to do that because it takes however many more minutes we got left. It takes time, and that's discipleship. And if you're not willing to do that, then, you know, for me, being here is pointless. It's all I've got, you know. So again, let's look at this a different way. God is not after courage. He's after conviction. So what you see coming from me and the fire in me is not courage. It's conviction. And that is a different thing. And that will not lose.
That's really, really good.
That's the difference. How do you get there? That's my question. That's why we have to raise our expectations of God, but you can't just do it. You have to go to the place where that is available.
You know, and that actually answers the question I asked earlier. That statement right there, that actually brings everything into perspective in my heart.
It's right here on my paper.
Right. And so, and of course I haven't seen that, and that's
where you haven't seen that, but
I'm just clarifying that for everybody. That to me was God answering that in the moment, because what I saw is King David charging at Goliath, and most people think he did it out of courage, but he did it out of deep conviction. I mean, I'm just saying.
I've been saying that, and that's what I'm about to say. But that right there is something that if you think you're going to go kill Goliath or faith heal him, and you don't have a revelation from God, which is, you know, the whole point of this show today, it won't happen. So quit trying to walk on water. Quit trying to do all these exploits. Quit trying to be some great whatever.
Yes.
If you don't know, you've got to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to step into that. David knew who he was because he was anointed well before he ever took the role of king. But he had to, I mean, you can talk about him, but yeah, I mean, that's the point. It's all through Scripture. But yeah, David knew he wasn't courageous. You have to have a little bit of courage to take that step. But he knew. That's a different thing. You know and you're knower. That's, I mean, that's what the point is. But people can hear that even and not nothing good happen.
Don't respond to it. Yeah.
So we have to talk about the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
People don't understand it. Bone and marrow. Okay, cool. That's just whatever. No, it's spirit and soul, and we have to take the time to talk through this.
Right.
If we don't, there's no point for me to be here. This is the point of this.
So there's the idea of it, and then there's the mechanics of how and why it was created and how it actually happens.
Yeah, I mean, you're always saying people want steps. So here's some steps. I'm trying to get that out, and I don't, I'm just tired of I'm tired of this. I'm ready to help people move forward, and so I'm just laying out whatever I know how to do to help them do that. But it's not fun, it's just getting tiring. The human spirit is like a radio receiver. People don't seem to know that. It does not interpret. God says, I'll never leave you or forsake you. What does that mean? That means can you be lost, saved? It has nothing to do with that. God dwells in your spirit. He will not leave it. He makes you that promise. But if you don't believe his word, then, don't go there. All I know is his word is what I start with, and it tells me that. So I have to dig into what does that actually look like. So the human spirit is the home for God's still small voice. His voice doesn't get louder. We become more sensitive to it. How does that work?
That's good.
It works because we bring our soul, which is the mind, will, and emotions, our heart, personality, creative gifts, whatever you want to put in there, in that realm, submits to that. Now, God will speak to your spirit in things. He'll tell you things. He'll give you a keyhole view of things that your mind cannot comprehend. So if God says, go up and do this, well, if you're not really listening or you know how to hear him from that place, then, you're doomed from the beginning. So your job isn't to develop your intellect or your courage. It's to go to the place of conviction. And whether it's David going toward something that was impossible, or Daniel, or Nehemiah, or, we could just name many people. I want to read this. I'm sure we're getting low on time here. So
3 minutes.
Faith comes by the hearing of God's word, but only with rigorous testing will its measure increase. To that end, any David willing to dance before God with all his might must first count the cost of being despised by others in exchange for his Father's delight. If we consider ourselves to be sheep in the fold of Jesus, those who hear his voice and follow, then the question arises, what would we do if he asked us to raise our hands and worship him on the front porch or in the supermarket? Or maybe while in the mall or jogging, listening to our music? The question is not whether we think it's unnecessary or even senseless, which I get that from people. That's not the question, but instead whether we know the sound of his voice and are consumed by obedience to it. That's the difference. You have to know the sound of his voice. So without hours and hours and hours to try to simplify this, you have to know where that comes from. You have to know that. And if you don't know that, then you're going to continually keep asking the same questions and keep expecting the same things of God, and go down to a place where you're not honoring God. You're just treating him like he's some uncle in the basement or in the attic or whatever. So, in other words, God is your source for everything. So you have to understand how this works together. And it's right here. So, I'm going to try to get this out, but I don't think we have time.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we'll keep pressing in. Wake Up Our Faith, back right after this. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to Wake Up Our Faith. Kevin and I appreciate you being here, pressing into this with us. We would love to connect with you on our website, youprint.life, youprint.life. If you're interested in any of the discipleship, diving deeper, we talked about it in the first segment today, make sure you reach out to us. We'd love to be there for you. Our corporate partners make this show possible. One of them is the Rising Tide Real Estate Team. This is a full-service real estate team representing buyers and sellers out of the Intracoastal office. Make sure to give them a call, 910-620-7177. Also, Century 21 Swalyer and Associates. This is a family-owned and operated real estate company, more than 30 years experience in southeastern North Carolina, Carolina's largest, most successful Century 21 agency, 910-256-0021. Physical Therapy Services of Wilmington, ptservicesofwilmington.com on the web, family-owned and operated since 1983, multiple locations to serve the city of Wilmington and surrounding areas, 910-763-8286. Also, our good friend Chris Hutchins and his team at Guaranteed Rate Mortgage. Guaranteed Rate Mortgage offers a variety of products. If you're buying or refinancing a home, Chris and his team have more than 30 years experience in the business, 910-344-0304. If you are buying a new home or if it's time to revisit your home and auto insurance needs, give our friend TJ Dunn at Shealy Insurance a call. They're an independent agency, which means he can shop and quote a variety of different companies to make sure you get the right coverage at the best rate. There is no charge to review your coverage. Make sure you give them a call, 910-408-0300, and ask for TJ. Dr. Chad Biggerstaff and his team at Blue Wave Dentistry offer comprehensive personal dental care located at the entrance to Brunswick Forest in Leland. Info at bluewavedentistry.com or give them a call, 910-383-2615. Dr. Greg Veeman and his Seacoast Skin Surgery office, also his ministry, Everlasting Strength. You can find him on the web, everlastingstrength.org, 910-256-2100. Also, the Freeman Landscaping, thanks to the Freeman family, Eastern North Carolina's largest landscaping irrigation firm, offering both residential and commercial landscaping and irrigation, 910-796-1166. And our good friend Christopher Riley at Cap Trust Wilmington. They're in the business of enriching the lives of clients and families through sound financial advice, offering integrity and a commitment to excellence toward those that they serve, 910-256-8882. Many thanks to all of our corporate partners. Now back to Wake Up Our Faith. Hello, welcome back to Wake Up Our Faith. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Matt Ham, Kevin Adams, co-founders of YouPrint, as well as the Life Center, and now launching the Fearless Trading Company. Got a lot of exciting stuff going on. We're going to kick off our second segment today with Kevin's wife, Holly Adams, for a segment called Here's Why. I believe that Holly is on the phone. Joe, we good to go there? All right.
Hi.
Hey, Holly.
How are you guys?
I'm good.
Hey, we're good.
Hey.
What you got?
Well, I kind of wanted to address, we seem to have a, well, I think I'll call him our biggest fan. Mr. Covington, he likes to write emails and get pretty worked up about us. I think in his opinion, he thinks we're telling people not to get the vaccine. So, Mr. Covington, this bud's for you. So here we go. There's a reference from the 80s for you. I don't know if anybody will get that. All right, so here we go. I wanted to start with a story. A good friend of ours, her grandmother, Judy, Went to the hospital 3 times. She wasn't feeling well. And 2 times they sent her home because she tested negative for COVID. Didn't give her anything, just sent her home. By the 3rd time she went, Judy was really sick. And that time her COVID test came back positive. Of course, she was admitted and immediately put in the ICU. They put her on remdesivir, and then they vented her. At that point, she started having organ failure, really high fever, and everything started to shut down for her in her body. Hospital staff says to our friend and their family, it's time to take her off the vent. And let's see if she can breathe on her own. They did that, and at that point in time, of course, the family is then allowed into the room to watch Judy die and gasp for breath that last hour. And that is fairly typical. From what I've read and what I understand, about 80% of the time when someone is put on that drug and vented, that is what their outcome looks like. Came across this quote from an ICU nurse in Florida, and this is her quote. "It's like a protocol for murder. I've seen it dozens of times. It's like a template. The same thing over and over and over." And this is the kicker for me. "Not all patients who get remdesivir die, but every patient who dies has had remdesivir." So this is a protocol that is literally killing people. I've heard it even said, how many people do you know that die of COVID at home? Most of these people are going to the hospital, they're getting these protocols, and they're dying. And a lot of people would say, well, if you look at the numbers, these people are unvaccinated. Well, you have to look at how the hospital qualifies people as unvaccinated. From my understanding, if someone is within 14 days of their vaccine and they die or they get sick, doesn't matter which one it is, 1st, 2nd, 3rd vaccine, they are considered unvaccinated. So we're not even getting the true numbers from the hospital. So, then I've got to ask, well, why wasn't Judy sent home with anything preventative? In El Salvador, their government is sending these preventative packets to their citizens. Why aren't we doing that here? Why does somebody like Judy have to come back 3 times and be that sick, and nobody ever offers her any hope or anything to help her get through it? Okay, so then I wanted to move on to the dangers of this vaccine. And I'm just going to today address what's in VAERS, which is the Vaccine Injury Report System that's from the CDC. So as of just a few days ago on the 17th, they showed that between December 14th of last year and September 10th, there was a total of 701,000 some odd adverse events following the COVID vaccine. Now, that data included a total of 14,925 deaths, which is an actual increase of 419 since the week before. There were 91,000 reports of serious injuries, and that includes deaths. That was during that same period, so up 3,000 compared to the previous week. So of those deaths that were reported, 12% occurred within 24 hours of the vaccine, 17% were within 48 hours of the vaccine, and 31% occurred in people who experienced the onset of symptoms within 48 hours of the vaccine. So a lot of these things are happening all within 48 hours of the vaccine. So it'd be pretty tough to attribute that to something else. And then, of course, you've got this Project Veritas video that's going around, I think, since it came out Monday. A whistleblower that worked in a hospital, a Native American hospital. So she's a federal employee. She's talking about the dangers of the vaccine, and there's doctors on there talking about it. So this is just something mainstream media isn't talking about. Nobody's talking about the amount of serious injury. We're talking Bell's palsy. We're talking something called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a neurological condition. And some of these people are not being able to walk out of this. I mean, their health, they've given it up, and they may have lifelong conditions from it. Okay, so there was a vaccine advisory committee meeting on the 17th, so a few days ago, to discuss whether they should authorize the 3rd booster shot. This is on YouTube for the public to see, but multiple doctors spoke at it. One of them was a guy named Steve Kirsch. He was executive director of COVID-19 Early Treatment Fund. And these are quotes from him. He says, The vaccines kill more people than they save. It was even stated people have 71 times more risk of heart attack following COVID-19 vaccine than any other vaccine, and we've seen a 1,000% increase in adverse events. And so, we also got talk of the Pfizer vaccine, of it being authorized by the FDA. Yet, if the FDA puts out something, they're supposed to let the public see what's in it. That's the agreement. There is something in the Pfizer vaccine that the FDA has withheld. So if you look at the sheet from them about what's in it, there's one ingredient that has been redacted. It makes up 22% of that vaccine. 1/5 of it, the public isn't allowed to know what it is. You guys cut me off, interject. I'm just giving you the facts for anybody who isn't hearing this on mainstream news.
Here's what I got
so they
to
know
say.
What they're...
Hey, thank you. Keep going. Take as long as you need
Okay.
to. We knew this was coming, so I want to say this. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I just want to say this.
You go ahead.
For people who say I don't watch the news and they're eye rolling about all these details, this isn't news. This is truth. And, we stopped watching the news after the Bush-Gore election. So that's not a new thing to us. Hurrah for you. Good. Don't watch it. It's crap. But it's Johnny-come-lately stuff. If you think that you don't have to fill your mind and heart up with truth, so don't watch the news. That's great because it's not true. And most people are starting to see that now. So what's next for you is fill your heart and your mind up with truth. And if you're doing the things we're talking about, you will begin to see this for what it is. People are doing everything they can without big production or big dollars to get this out there. We just happen to research the crap out of it, and my bride does it better than anybody. So I'm just saying, really, really pay attention to what she's saying and what we're saying. And if you're not listening, too bad for you. So go ahead, Holly.
Well, just a couple more things. I think people have to ask themselves, why would there be this narrative? If all of this information that I've just read you is true, which it is, because it comes from the CDC's own website. So the numbers are out there, and I will say the VAERS is low because it's so time-consuming for a nurse to enter this information into, I think it's 30 minutes to an hour for one patient. So it's gotten to where a lot of nurses and medical staff aren't even entering this information anymore. So the numbers I read you are actually low. Okay, so why this narrative? Well, it's to create fear. People in New Hanover County should know that because there was a leaked video that came out a couple of weeks ago from the New Hanover Regional Medical Center. It made national news, where they were basically discussing how they would count recovered COVID patients as active COVID hospitalizations in an effort to inflate those numbers. Well, why would you do that other than to create fear? Anybody who has critical thinking should understand that. Well, if you create fear, that's how you sell your vaccine tests. That's how you push them out there. But people, like you said, Kevin, people have to learn to critically think about these things for themselves. If you want to, like Israel is ahead of us on data. The way they've collected it is far better than we have in the U.S. They track everything, even the breakthrough cases, which the U.S. chose to stop tracking in May of 2021. So if you want to look at true data, you got to look at Israel, who's already now they're saying, oh, we're going on to our 4th booster. And what they're finding is that those that received the jab are like 6.72 times more likely to get infected than those people with natural immunity. So you're taking the risk of this shot, and it's not making you any more immune. In fact, if you get COVID and you can recover from it, and I'm going to talk about that in a second because I do have hope for people, then you have an immunity to any variant. These people that are getting the shot, it's for the original COVID-19. So, of course, there's these variations, these variants that develop through this what they call a leaky vaccine. So people that get the vaccine, they can't fight the variants. So they're getting even sicker. Okay. And so for me, the bottom line is these are proving to be dangerous and ineffective. And not to mention the fact that they're being used to strip away our freedoms. And if people can't see that,
Yes.
you're just blind. I mean, you're just
Exactly.
blind.
Yep.
I mean, you've got people who are willing to stand up to this. You know, Kevin, we have a friend that said they have a friend who is a 12-year highly decorated cardiologist, and she's willing to walk away from the hospital she works at.
Right.
So these hospitals are losing their best because of this forced mandate. Okay, so why would somebody be willing to do that? Why would somebody lose their medical degree? They're walking away from it. There's people in medical school now, nursing school, they're walking away with debt and no degree because they're refusing this. Well, because they know what's in it. They know the truth. Okay,
Right.
but I don't want to end there. I want to end with there is some hope. There are tons of preventative and early treatment measures that keep you from having to even go to the hospital. And I have seen countless testimonials of these working. I've seen it, people that I know personally. So it's not just witch doctor stuff. It's not out there. This is stuff that real doctors are using, and it's out there. Okay, people need to go to americasfrontlinedoctors.org. They have listed all their protocols. They have preventative treatment. They have early treatment. Oh, some of it you don't even need a prescription for. But they also offer telemedicine. So if there are things that you need, you can get them from them. I will say they are absolutely overwhelmed. So you can get in early, get what you need, have it on hand, be prepared so that you can save your life and potentially save someone else's that you loved life. So, you know, people can choose to ignore this, but this could save your life. Going to speak to a doctor like that could save you or a loved one. So, and I also want to end with this. At one point in time, India was used as an example to scare people, how they were handling COVID. But now that they are using ivermectin, they have a 98.7% recovery, and now we don't hear about them anymore because their people are actually getting better. And, you know, in these kids in El Salvador, that's one of the things that was in them, was ivermectin. So there you go, Mr. Covington. That's why we have our strong stance on these vaccines, because there's another way, and they're killing people.
Well, just to be clear, this guy is someone who I guess has emailed in and said we're idiots for, you know, we're talking people out of vaccines. And I know for sure our life has affected many people about this, and I'm not ashamed of that because I think in the end it'll prove out. But anyway, this stuff that you're talking about, that we've been talking about, we've been saying this for a long time, and we constantly, there's not a day that goes by where there aren't people going, hey, can you give me some info, or can you give me a document or a video? And it's like, you know, we will because we care, but you got to take that step for yourself. You know, it's a lot of work, and maybe it's why I'm frustrated a little bit because, you know, I'm just tired of it. It's time for people to step into this, and you can't sit back anymore. You got to know the truth. And so anyway, it's really important. We're trying to help. So take it for what it is. And Covington, you know, thanks for your comments, but you know, take that.
Well, I hope it helps them. That's the point of all of this, is if it helps one person, if it helps save one life and keeps them out of the hospital, then everything will have been worth it. So, and you know, just to throw this out there, you don't have to email. There's a phone number. Call in. You know, you guys are on Wednesday, 11:15ish for about an hour. I'm sure you'd love to hash it out with them. So,
yeah.
All right.
Bring
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Call. All right. Love you. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly.
Okay. Bye-bye.
You know, Kev, that her segment, which I love Holly's heart and her willingness to put in the time and effort, that brought a lot of light to the first segment. And, you know, kind of working through this topic is, you know, I think that there's a lot of people that we walk with, and there's a lot of people that, you know, maybe they're placing expectations on us to do this, do this, do this, do this. And what we're looking back across the table is to say, God is the source of expectation. And so shoulder this with us. Let's partner with this, raise our expectations of him, and do this together, rather than us having to be the ones who carry, the weight of all of this, discipleship and education and truth, et cetera, et cetera. Is that a fair statement?
It is. You have to own your faith. Faith is not about courage. It's just not. It's about conviction. And you can tell the difference. You have to think about it. You have to be convicted about this. You can't go back and say, I don't want to talk about politics, or you can't do that crap anymore. This is between good and evil. There's a scene in The Band of Brothers, and it may be in there more than once, but if you haven't seen it, watch it. There's the guys coming right out of boot camp who are all green and excited, and they've got a little bit of courage mustered. And then they pass the guys coming back from the front lines who are, they're missing limbs and they're beat to crap and they're just worn out. Those guys have conviction. They pass, and these guys are like, what's wrong with them? Or what did they go through? And the guys they got nothing to say. Me and my wife are on that Jeep coming back. And if we sound tired or worn out, or I do, it's because of that. We've given every single ounce of energy and time that we have to this because we are convicted about it. And I will, include you in that. But it's, if you know what David did, but yet you're over here telling somebody this, then there's there's something missing. So my question would go back to you. When you're thinking about David knowing victory, knowing he's going to win, when you're praying for this person, where's the disconnect for you?
Yeah. And that's what I'm honestly trying to learn. I mean, humbly, admittedly, I'm trying to learn that because I felt something in my spirit that said, minister to this person.
If you're representing other people, if you're going to be the audience advocate, then how do you answer that? That's my question for you.
Yeah, and that's where I come to you as my mentor and as someone who's guided me in this, because it's something that I struggle with, because you've taught me how to listen to the Spirit. And in that particular moment, I felt something in my spirit that said, minister to this person. Now, I did not feel something that said, pray for healing. But ultimately, with a bunch of people around, that was what happened.
Why?
Well, because there is a disconnect between soul and spirit, and people.
No, I mean, what was the expectation of other people? You're laying out a scenario.
Yeah, and I don't know because I haven't had the opportunity to converse with them about that. I mean, this is all real fresh. And so, again, it's probably not the appropriate place to hash it out. I was just trying to engage the conversation.
Well, no, you brought it up, so it does need to be talked about because it's an example of what you're saying is the problem.
Right. So what I perceive and what I believe is that in that moment, because of this subtlety between the difference in soul and spirit, people are interjecting their own will into that moment to pray for healing. And so it leaves me with the question, and this is me asking it out loud, not to you, but hypothetically, are we ever relieved as followers of Jesus to not pray for healing? Like, is there ever a moment where we shouldn't not pray for healing?
Yeah. And if you need the answer to that, because we don't have time, like I said earlier, then read the cleanse because it's in there. But I'll say it this way, and we'll get to this next week, I guess. But your responsibility is faith. Faith is built on conviction. It's the belief that God is faithful to you. It's not just God loves me. You've got to get beyond that. We talked about this last week. So your responsibility in any situation is to be faithful, not to come up with the answer. You, me, any of us. People that say they have all the answers are probably not worth listening to. Is that what I'm saying? No, I'm just speaking from my own experience where I've seen God move, and it's been confirmed over and over again. That's a different thing. That's not a gamble. That's just the truth. So our responsibility is to be faithful. That's it. It's not about measuring the outcome. When you plant a seed, God's the one that makes it grow. Your job is to plant it joyfully with great expectation of God. God is the how and the how long. Our will tries to hijack that, but that's not what happened with David. David knew. That's a different thing. He was convicted. It wasn't David's courage although he had courage. Courage follows conviction. If you're convicted about something, you will stand up for it no matter what. If you only muster courage, then you will fail at some point. You will become tentative about it, or you'll say, well, I don't want to hear all that. Or you'll say, well, and just bury your head. It's up to you, not you, but whoever. But this is big stuff. This is really important. People are dying. I've seen it. So, it's not all about the details, but you have to talk about this stuff. But the mechanics of it are what I want to get to, because that's what people's real question is. How does this work? So, we have to, at some point, talk through that.
Yeah. And we've got 4 minutes left in today's show, so however you want to conclude.
Yeah, not going to happen. I think that the bottom line here, from a bird's eye view, the best thing is to know that the written word, which we've been talking about, I've been really talking about this a lot. The written word it renews your mind. Most people understand that to some degree if they know Scripture. But what does that actually mean? Well, take away this. The renewed mind is one that is pointed away from the physical surroundings and back toward the spirit. The renewed mind is one that is submissive and submitted to the Spirit of God that lives in your spirit. So the human spirit is the house or the receiver of what God's saying. It does not interpret that. When you hear people talking about, I'm a prophet or whatever, they're over-interpreting things. Now, I'm not saying they're not out there. There are some, but most people think they are, and they're not. So they over-interpret, and then they get back to the scenario you painted in the beginning. Again, there's so much here, but you are made up of spirit, soul, and your body. And this all has to flow in a certain direction. Written word guards your heart. It points your mind, will, and emotions all back to being led by the Spirit of God. Read Romans 8. Those who are led by it, these are the children or the sons. It's a masculine term. It means us. And that simply means that's what the end result of discipleship is. So it's not just simply saying something. You have to walk this out, and it takes time.
Yeah.
Which we do not have today.
Right. Well, and again, the time aspect is what it takes, and that's the investment that people have to make to be willing to go through the discipleship process to learn this. And I'll say this, as my picture is that the church, the body of Christ, is so hungry for this, but this is so needed to differentiate between cultural Christianity and actually living out what Jesus called us to live.
Yeah.
This is the process that people have to go through. And until we're willing to step away from the way it's always been done, to step away from our soul, our willpower, and let God speak to us in those subtle areas of our heart where we're still living by our own willpower, by our own understanding, we won't have revelation or, this idea of reformation or restoration or revolution that, we've been talking about. Kev, thanks today for always for pouring out. Guys, just a couple of things as we wrap up. I want to say this. Kevin said two things today that I wrote down that really pressed into me in a different way. And one is that God is not interested in your courage. He's interested in your conviction. That is a massively powerful thought. In addition to that, the human spirit does not interpret. It is a receiver. And that's a really big difference on how we begin to live out what it is that God gives us. So, guys, we're here for you. Would love to connect. YouPrint.life, YouPrint.life. We've got a lot more to unpack, and we'll see you back to do that next week.